quite sure how to pronounce today's artist. Is it DVRST? DVRST? Is it DVRST? Who knows? But what I do know is that their biggest song came out almost a year ago, and we're still hearing it every day on social media. They've just released a brand new song and they have 7.5 million monthly listeners. That's crazy. Let's jump into it. Okay, until somebody tells me otherwise, I'm just going to refer to this artist as DVRST, so apologies, but let me know in the comments. It's a fairly simple project that we'll be looking at today, and this is available at the Patreon as well as a MIDI session, so you can drag in your own sounds and really get to grips with what the delays and saturators and other tools are doing. As long as you have Ableton Suite, everything should work for you, but I'll still make the stems available, as always. If you're at the Patreon and you want to see more MIDI projects like this and less third-party VSTs, just let me know if it's helpful and I'll gladly create it. Let's dive into it. We're going to look at two groups. We've got a musical group and a drum group. I think it's more helpful if we start with the drums, so let's dive into it. Our drum group just has the drum bus here with a little bit of soft distortion. The drive is up 7.7%, got 14% crunch and a little bit of damp. The damp is just going to essentially dampen the sound. It's going to make it less bright. So all of our drum sounds are coming from Ableton stock sounds, and with the kick here, I'm using the 808 core kick. Quite a bass heavy dude, and this is all built in, so we're going to skip this chain because it just comes with the preset. But I have added the saturator. It's going to be a recurring theme for today's session. The saturator is set at 7.77 dB. I've added a little bit of color. Bass is up, frequency is up to 1 kilohertz. I think that might be as it comes in by default, and soft clip is on. And I've just EQ'd some of the mud and some of the extra subby stuff because we're going to have some big 808s later, and we've taken some of the high end out, just a little bit of a boost here. The limiter, for obvious reasons, he's a big character. I've got two hi-hats in this project. The first hi-hat is playing more of kind of a trappy vibe. This is what it looks like. Super high passed. Velocity is going to make sure that you kind of have that up-down pattern, but they're really, really quantized hi-hats. The second hi-hat is a little bit more of a hip-hop hi-hat, looking like this, just playing the downbeats of the session and occasionally these kind of triplet notes. But still kind of has that up-down pattern. Let's look at that first hi-hat and see what the processing is looking like. So we're using this hi-hat closed pointy hat. Remember, they're all coming from Ableton, and I'm really, really high passing that EQ8, but I am rolling it off a tiny bit. You don't want it to be super harsh in the sideband profile for your listeners. Compressor, another key theme for today's session. We'll start glossing over this later so I don't keep repeating myself, but we're going to have a side chain to the kick quite often. The only thing that's really going to change is the threshold amount, so how much the instrument ducks. Remember, this is over at the Patreon if you want to look over it yourself. We've got a second hi-hat here, which we're high passing just as much, but this 505 classic hi-hat there, and then the sidechain compressor once again. Again, a really high passed open hat, but it's letting a little bit more air through than the lower hat was that was swept off to about 10K. So those ones together sound like this. I have this clap stack here, boosting up kind of the muddy frequency around 200. So I have this EQ8 here, sweeping off anything that's lower than kind of 200 Hertz. I'm guessing, yeah, 200 Hertz bang on. And it's just boosting it a little bit there and just taking down some of the harshness. Again, sidechain compressor again. This is a bit weird on a clap, right? That clap is going to occur on the downbeat of a kick, but we'll come back to for why in a sec. The first sound is our clap 808, and we're just kind of constricting the sound with the EQ8 here. It's sounding like this. Originally, it was a little bit brighter. Adding a tiny bit of saturation and then the limiter there. We've also got a nice 808 snare as well. So again, just rolling off those sounds below 201 Hertz and adding the limiter. So why have I got this sidechain compressor? So if you listen to the snare without the sidechain compressor, it sounds very bright, very open. It's almost bassy and it's quite full. If we add that sidechain compressor, what it's going to do is create kind of a fade in, like a natural attack to our snare. I'll play it with and without. This wouldn't necessarily be my choice, but it's definitely something that I could hear within diverse track. And then finally, I've got this long tambourine sound with just a little bit of reverb on it and a high cut filter. Just adds a nice sound to those drums. Let's hear everything together. It's playing every other snare. Okay, so let's get to the melodies. As always, this isn't a like-for-like remake because as the channel title would suggest, this is inspired by. We're just going to take inspiration to show you how you can adapt the characteristics of that artist to your own sound. If I was going to create a remix or a cover, I'd probably use DistroKid. Check this out. You see, we've just had the Halloween season, we're on our way to Christmas, and creating cover songs is a great way to introduce your music to a wider audience. That way you can put out more original work further into the new year, and that audience is already going to be receptive of your sounds. If you're already a DistroKid member, you of course already have access to this, but if not, you can use the link in the description and get 7% off your first year. Let's get back to the video. All right, so melodies, let's dive into it. I think the most significant sound has got to be the 808 cowbell. So all you're going to do is come over to drum sounds and you're going to type in cowbell and you're just going to find the 808 cowbell inside bells. If you've seen my other video on what PHONK is and how to create it, then you'll know that this is kind of the staple sound within the genre. Once you've got that sound in a sampler, you're probably going to pitch it down on your keyboard. This is the pattern that I'm playing without any other effects. So that 808 cowbell is probably sounding a little bit more aggressive than the bell you have lined up with this video, and that's probably because of my music group processing. I'm going to come back to that at the end, so don't go anywhere. So for my 808 cowbell, what I have is a quick delay. I've set it to time 306 milliseconds and 320 milliseconds for this cowbell. Now, if you're in a different BPM, you're going to want to change that. I'm in 97 BPM, 20% feedback as it comes in, and then the dry wet is set to 21%. I'm just bringing this filter over to the right-hand side there at 3.74 kilohertz, and it's set to ping pong. I'm then going into a saturator, bringing up that drive to about 4 and the bass to 4.5. Everything else is left by default, and I've got that soft clip on. Now you've seen this a million times, so I've got that side chain going to the kick, of course, but only a little bit, and then a little bit of reverb as well. And then I just wanted to roll off some of those lows to make way for our 808. So we're just rolling off anything below 220. The next sound we have here is essentially a wavetable sound that I think I took from the stock presets and just manipulated a little bit. In oscillator 1, we've got these basic shapes, kind of like a manipulated triangle wave, and that's set to 40%. The detune is set to 5 cents, and that's going to be important because when we come over to oscillator 2, we're in retro and we're using this echo shape, and we're at 39% with the detune set to 0. When you detune those two oscillators, that's how you get that kind of pitch bend lo-fi sound, almost like there's a unison added. Speaking of unison, there is a little bit there, but unison is set to noise with 6 voices and 80%. That's going to give us this kind of sound. If you want less noise, then you just bring that right down. I like it with the noise. It adds, again, like that lo-fi kind of sound. And then you're going to want to come over to your matrix as well and apply -78 to unison, 25 to LFO 1, and then -25 to oscillator 1 position. Our LFO is looking like this, not dissimilar to how it comes in at default with the rate set to 0.32 hertz. I'm using the EQ8 here, and this is giving us a really constricted, like telephone EQ. I'm taking off that fundamental frequency. That was just a little bit too piercing for the listener. I'm using Redux, which you don't see me use too often. Bring that rate down, bring the bits down as well to give it, again, more of a bit crush sound. And then using the reverb to just extend that note a little bit. I felt that some of the notes were sticking out a little bit, so I'm using the glue compressor just to kind of constrict that dynamic range. That's going to help us alongside our next melody, which is made in Operator. It's just a triangle wave pluck sound. So you've seen me make a sine pluck a bunch of times, exactly the same, but just setting this wave to triangle there. This is our pattern. Quantized again, and quite a playful pattern to play off that main 808 cowbell sound. But it's really washed out right now. So what we want to do is just kind of boost the level of that OP, give it a little bit more of a characteristic. So we're going to add the delay again, very similar to what we did last time. Saturator 4 and 4. So again, we're copying over some of the effects we've used before. Compressor, sidechain to the kick, and some reverb. Very similar to what we saw above, but without the redux. That gives us this. Play it with the pads. And let's bring in that 808 cowbell once again. Lovely stuff. So now we get to the really exciting bit, the 808. We made this 808 inside Operator. It's not a hard sound to make. All you want to do is create a sine wave. I've chose sine 8 because it's going to give a bit more of a bit crushed 808 sound. We're just using the first oscillator, so oscillator A here, and I'm setting that level to -12, but you can see that the course is set to 2. I've got a decay rate of 4.25 with the release set to 2.7, and this is all pretty much to taste, so do play around with it. My 808 notes are super long, lasting for 2 beats of the bar. But we want to really make it smack. To get that 808 kind of pitch drop sound, all you want to do is create a pitch envelope. So turn this guy on. I've set mine to 16%, but there's no spread, no transposition there. And you've got to make sure that your destination is set to A oscillator. Doesn't really matter about this B oscillator. I just left it on as I forgot about it. There's no glide or anything here, but here's where it gets a little bit exciting. So we can kind of create a more low pass or high pass sound with our filter, nothing that we haven't seen before. I got mine set to about 2.17, but what I'm using is the shaper here. I've never really used this before. So originally my 808 was sounding like this. Just kind of a sine wave, nothing really super exceptional. What I've done is set it to hard, come down to shape drive, and that's going to boost the drive of that shaper. I've got it set to 9 decibels. You've also got a dry wet mix, which really helps create something that's subtle or something that's more hard hitting. So mine's set to 80%. I've messed around with frequency to key here. I like the sound of it at 45%. And then this envelope really helps dial in that sound design. This filter envelope here is going to create a more hard hitting sound or a sound that kind of fades in. So have a listen to the sound at 80%. You can really hear the attack there, right? If we pull that envelope down, you'll still be able to hear the 808 sound, but it'll be a little bit more subtle. So I've got this set to -20. And that's pretty much all I'm doing with that sound. I'm then adding the vocoder because I wanted a little bit of noise with this. I don't really like the noise that's added in Operator. I like to kind of design it separately. So I'm applying the vocoder, setting the carrier type to noise, and then I'm drawing in this curve here, bringing the depth down and then messing with the attack and release, as well as the formant and the dry wet. The higher the formant, the brighter your noise is going to be. I liked it kind of dark, kind of lo-fi once again. I'm setting that 808 to mono because we want it nice and central, and then a limiter because he's again quite a big boy. Now underneath that, I've got the 808 parallel. It's pretty much exactly the same, except I'm constricting that EQ as we've seen before, but the saturator is turned up to the max. I've got the drive up all the way, as is the bass, as is the frequency, and as is the depth. This is going to make something that's super, super over compressed, and you can see how quiet this is in the mix. It sounds like this. This is kind of like parallel compression. I guess it's kind of the lazy way. All I did was take the parallel compression 808 out of the mix, which is up an entire octave, by the way, and then slowly start to bring it into the mix. When I can start hearing it take effect, I'm going to leave it about there. That's just going to help pull it out of the mix a little bit. And that's pretty much it. Let's listen to our music group. It's super hard hitting and definitely a vibe. I can't fault it. We've got just a little bit more to go in the way of processing. So let's look at my music group. We've got a saturator. Surprise, surprise. We've got a little bit of drive, and I'm taking that bass down a little bit. The EQ8 is really important here. You want to set it to mid-side mode, and then you want to make sure that this is set to side. We just want to take down the harsh frequencies that we're getting from the hats and all the saturation in the track. So we're rolling this off quite a bit to about 2.7 kilohertz. That's just the sideband profile, and we're doing the same with the low end. You could probably be a little bit more strict with this and probably take it right up to about 100 hertz. With the mid-band frequencies, again, I'm just rolling off a little bit of that really subby stuff that no one's going to hear and taking out just a little bit of mud in the middle. But again, super, super subtle stuff. I'm adding the chorus ensemble. This is going to create that lo-fi vibrato sound. You'll notice this when I turn the amount up. But at 10%, it just creates a little bit of that kind of detuned vinyl sound. Again, just adds a little bit of color to your mix. We've got the tiniest bit of redux on here, so just bit crushing the track a little bit. It's just the tiniest amount. You could probably hear a little bit of that brightness, that little fuzzy sound coming out of the mix just a tad, and then an overall sidechain compressor to the music group from the kick. It's just ducking the sound by like 5.5 decibels just to allow that kick to come through, and then a final limiter because it's a super aggressive track. And that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Don't forget to look into DistroKid, especially with that Christmas season coming up, and let me know what you want to see in future episodes in the comments. We're so close to 20,000 subscribers. I can't even believe it. I thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.